Well, as a business owner in the trades, construction, manufacturing, distribution, we're constantly faced with decisions, investments in our company. We're trying to navigate through, are these the right choices to help us grow, help us achieve our goals? What's the ROI? And all these things. And at Ellerbrock-Norris, we're in a unique position to be able to see these conversations, navigate these conversations on a regular basis. And so we're going to share a lot of what we know, a lot of what we hear, and tell those stories.
Awesome. Well, let's build off of that.
Let's do it.
We are super excited to be here. I'm Elliot Bassett, president of Ellerbrock-Norris. I've got with me Andy Bassett, CEO of Ellerbrock-Norris, also published author.
Yes.
Which is awesome. So go check out the book, right? Why don't you tell everybody a little bit
about it? It's right there.
Right here. My Business, My Life, and My Future.
Yeah, My Business, My Life, My Future. Super exciting. I mean, it really encapsulates the story of what a lot we're going to talk about over time on the podcast, but just the conversations and stories we're having regularly with people in the trades, again, construction, manufacturing, wholesale, distribution, about how do we build on that business to achieve our goals in the business, in our lives personally, and then kind of connect that to ultimately the future that we all build as builders, makers, doers. There's going to be something after the business, and how do we connect all those dots?
Absolutely.
So really, that's what the book's about.
Yeah, and that's what's fun, why we wanted to start this podcast, is we get a unique lens into a lot of different businesses and what they're doing to, do everything you just mentioned, where all of these things are interconnected. Your business is interconnected with your personal life. It's interconnected with your future goals. And, we get to see how businesses approach that, and we get to help them have the right conversations in their business to achieve all those things. And so we wanted to make sure that, when we see and we hear these conversations and these strategies and these things businesses are doing, that we had the ability to talk through it on, podcast style conversation to bring those to everybody else that's in those businesses. Because, I don't know, we all know that when you're running a business, you're always wondering, like, should I be doing something different? Am I doing the right things? Am I making the right decisions? And sometimes it helps to see what other businesses are doing to be able to inform what you're doing in the decision you want to make, right?
100%. Well, and when we build things, when we make things, we're proud of those things. Like in these businesses, how cool is it to be able to drive down the street and say, I worked on that project.
I built that building.
Or we were part of that, or we built that, or we made that, and but the other lens, or the lens we get to look through when we hear those stories, is everything that went into making that happen. The decisions that were made at the ground level, prior to a project, during a project, prior to making something, while it's made, after it's made, and all of these decisions. And so we want to share that because there's incredibly cool things that are happening, cool decisions that are being made, incredibly intelligent decisions that are being made, that all of us, if we understand those, can turn around and take that information and utilize it to be successful in our businesses.
Yeah, totally. Because there's even things that, we'll be working with clients on and get surprised or maybe surprise isn't the right word, but it's man, that's really sweet how they accomplished this thing, perpetuating the company or solving for employee injuries or, all the things that go into running the right business, running a trades business. That we get to see. And I think those are the things that we'd like to be able to have those conversations on a regular basis and bring those strategies, those solutions to everybody out there in a forum like this where we can just talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in the future, we're going to be doing some episodes like this where it's you and I talking about a client or a situation that we came across that we thought is really beneficial and telling those stories. But we're also going to be having a lot of guests on. Yeah. And one of the coolest things with that is we're going to be able to hear the stories of these businesses and hear how they got from day one to 30 years down the road, and how the next generation might take it over. How they got from building houses to building skyscrapers, things like that are just really cool stories. And then along the way, lessons that they learned and things that allowed them to get there. Mm-hmm. And one of those today that we're gonna talk about is a client story that we were involved in that was, very much a risk management decision, right, which we'll get into, but led to a massive relief on the company and really protected them in a situation that, could have impacted them financially, their employee, all of those things that really could have been detrimental to the company. But because they went through and had those discussions, and this wasn't an overnight decision, but because they did that and they went through that and made the decision to invest in some of these things in their company, really put them in a good spot. So set up kind of the conversation, give us a little bit of history as to how this company got to where they're at, and then we'll kind of dive into the situation.
Yeah, I mean, there's, like we said, there's so many things that as a owner and operator in a trade business that we're contemplating doing on a regular basis. And in construction, a lot of risk and a lot of what we talk about is related to, we're using heavy equipment and operating heavy vehicles, right? And so, and we know too, it doesn't take long to do a couple Google searches and see just how large litigation has become.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about nuclear litigation. In conversations,
89 nuclear verdicts over $10 million last year.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy. Yeah.
So exactly. So you're thinking, like, as a business owner, it's like, what on earth am I going to do if I've got a $20 million or $50 million or $100 million verdict against my company? And so, these are the decisions that we're navigating through on a regular basis. So one of the things that we talk about a lot, and we've had these conversations with our clients, and the story we'll tell a little bit today, one of those risk management strategies we can invest in to hopefully, deter this large litigation environment is telematics in our vehicles, right? And so, telematics is an interesting conversation because people have varying views of it. It's well, I don't want a big brother.
That's what we get all the time.
Our team, and I don't want, we've got this culture where, I don't want our drivers thinking we're watching every move they do. But then there's the flip side of it is that, like, well, as the owner and leader of the business, like, my job is to protect the company and the longevity of it. And I'm reading about all these large lawsuits and this litigation, and it keeps me up at night. And so we have these conversations on a regular basis. And again, we'll tell a story about it, but it looked like you were about to ask a question.
The main thing with that is, like, a lot of times your team member employee can't see that bigger picture, which we're going to get into the impact that this could have had on this particular driver. But sometimes we have to be able to sit in that position as the leader, as the business owner, and whether or not you can help them understand the reason why this is important is obviously the best way to go about it. But sometimes you just have to say, this is the way we're going, or this is the decision I've made. Here's why, and that's what we're going to do. And not everybody's going to be a fan of it, but I think the importance of these decisions is not always going to be captured by your team because it's changed for them. It's we talk about safety all the time. They sometimes just want to get up on the ladder and build the thing, but they don't realize how dangerous that can be. How one quick slip and fall can mean disaster. And so it's up to us as leaders and the business owner to be able to really have those hard discussions and invest in the right areas. So I just want to make that point because it does have a direct impact on the driver. In this
100%. So again, when it comes to telematics as a decision, I think a lot of what you just said was what we saw as this client of ours was navigating through the decision to make, and ultimately made the decision on why to do it. But a big piece of it was the cultural conversation and how are we going to communicate this to our drivers. We've got a big fleet out there. And so they were thinking about it all the right way. And where they got to, and I think this is really important if you've ever considered telematics as a risk management strategy, is it's one thing to say, oh, I'm going to go implement it because it might reduce insurance costs or it might protect me in this incident. But you've got to look through every lens. And so this client was battling back and forth again. How do I communicate it to the drivers? And the perspective they took is this isn't about big brothering or anything like that. This is about being able to give our drivers the tools and resources to take in information, take in data, and help them get better, right? And so there was massive training opportunities that came out of it. Obviously, there's corrective actions that need to take place when things are happening. But like there was a huge way to say, this isn't about watching you, this is about making you better. This is about us being able to deliver on what we see, be able to sit down, be able to show and talk through, what could have happened and protect you. Because at the end of the day, like if these examples of these large lawsuits, something really bad happened, right? Mm-hmm. Likely somebody was killed, multiple people were killed, somebody seriously injured. And when you think about, like, obviously that's incredibly damaging, potentially could end a business, right? So that's the piece the business owner's thinking about. But think about the person driving that vehicle. Like they don't want, like that is going to impact them the rest of their lives. if they were looking at their cell phone, or if they were doing something and made an error, and all of a sudden a family of 4, with 2 young kids is dead.
Well, and think about if they didn't, and then they're getting accused of that, and they cost the company, in one of these lawsuits because we didn't have evidence that no, our driver did everything right. It's just, we can't show you that, and so I think that's another flip side too. That
100%.
So I love how they came at it from that perspective of this is a tool to make us better. We're going to use it for training. And that ultimately, if you don't abuse that, your employees hopefully at some point can learn to trust that, that's how you are going to use it. And again, be very careful that you don't abuse it and use it in the wrong way. But these are things and tools that you can use to make your drivers better.
Yeah, 100%. And so they were very successful in that, which, by the way, that 100% our wholehearted belief is, if you're looking at this particular risk management strategy, again, telematics, is that you need to be doing it from a foundation of, we're going to utilize it to train, we're going to utilize it to discipline when we have to. It's not just going to be a set it and forget it situation. Because the other lens this client was looking through, which I loved, was if we do invest in this and it becomes a set it and forget it mentality, and something bad does happen, now we're in depositions and we're in litigation, and all of a sudden attorneys are asking us, oh, I see you have telematics. Show us how you used telematics. When they've got nothing to show, meaning they weren't doing anything, that actually is going to put them in a potentially a worse position when it comes to litigation. And so they were thinking through that, which was a great lens to think through. That it's like, we could invest, which it's not cheap to do. We could invest in this strategy, and if we don't use it the right way, it could come back to hurt us. So there was that lens. Because again, you also have to be prepared for when you've got cameras, when there's video of what happened. Not only is it going to show you the things you did right in an incident, it's going to show you the things you didn't do right.
Yeah.
And so that's where training and education becomes so important, because if we can take all this information we see when things don't happen, educate, so that when things do happen, we're actually in the right, not the wrong.
Yeah.
That's going to be why we're in the best position. But I mean, those are the ideas behind it. I can kind of tell a story.
Yeah, I want to.
Really cool.
I do. I would definitely want to get to that, because I think it'll really frame in why we're having this discussion. But I want to hit on that last point, because I think it's so important that anytime we're having these discussions about different strategies to implement in the business, to invest in, particularly around risk management, I think you have to look at it under both of those lenses. Number one, ideally, and obviously various different strategies in your risk management program are trying to do different things, but ideally we are preventing the bad incident from happening. So that's where in this case it can be, we're training our drivers to, when we see this happen, they're speeding, they're hard braking, they're whatever, we're then coming back and teaching them how to adjust their behavior. To prevent, obviously something, they hard braked here because a car stopped in front of them, they were following too close. Well, we didn't get in an accident here, but in the future that could lead to an accident. So you're training them to avoid those future accidents. But the key that I think you said there is, some of these strategies require you to take that extra step of actually making the change. And, sometimes ignorance is bliss, right? And so a lot of business owners that we talk to are like, well, I just don't want to know, because then I can't be liable. But I mean, I think that's definitely not the approach that we recommend to most folks. You want the information, you want to be doing the right things to train your team. You can't be setting them up for the right situation without knowing what they're running into on a regular basis. But that kind of leads us to this particular story, which I think is a great one to highlight how these technologies can be used. So kind of walk through the situation, and then we'll get to the aftermath of what actually occurred and the result.
So again, framing this for all the reasons we've talked about, we can tie it together to a story. The result of this story, again, is not necessarily the reason. It's the outcome.
Yep.
The reason is everything the foundation we just laid. But so in this example, going through, this client went through all the discussion we had. So I get a call. It's like early, 7:30 on it doesn't matter what day. I think it was a Friday morning, actually. 7:30 Friday morning, I get a call from the owner. He says, he's in panic. He's like, I'm on my way to a scene. We've got a really bad situation. And so what the situation is on a 2-lane highway, our client, large truck, contractor, hits a small school bus for like a local community, nonprofit.
Like a community center, yeah.
Community center, head on.
Yep.
No fatalities, fortunately,
Thank goodness.
but a really, really nasty accident, quite a few injuries, etc. So I get this call. He's in panic mode. I'm on my way down. It's not good. Sounds like, we're at fault, all the bad things. And, I'm like, all right, well, I can head that way if I need to, whatever, keep me in the loop. So calls me back, and he's on scene. And he starts to share with me that, there's witnesses there, all of which in the moment, we've got big bad insurance company with big heavy truck, and we've got local community small van. Every witness on scene is saying, we crossed the center line, we caused the accident, we hit them head on, this is bad, bad, bad. Well, business owner gets to the scene, this is all he's hearing, cops on scene, all this stuff, everything going the wrong way as it possibly can. And he gets a call, or he's communicating back with his office, and they quickly share that, I'm not so sure.
Because they're looking at the video back at the office, yeah.
They're like, I'm not so sure the stories on the scene are accurate with what the video is telling us. And so in that moment, they have, the script gets flipped 100%, right? And so again, we've got all these witnesses, everybody pinning it on big bad insurance company. Well, what the video shows is the exact opposite happened. So our driver has done nothing wrong. Oncoming vehicle actually crossed the center line. That's what causes the accident. So again, without that information, there is no way. We've got witnesses, we've got everything.
Yeah.
So this is all taking place in real time in my conversation with the business owner. He's on the scenes, he's asking me kind of advice. He's got his attorney on the phone as to what to do. And so ultimately, on the advice of his attorney, with limited information, just said, go ahead and let them know. We've got telematics in the vehicle. We have clear video of exactly what happened, and share that with the cop and everybody on the scene. So he does that, and immediately the story, the tune, the tone, which the driver of the other vehicle was 100% coherent and okay, which is crazy.
Yeah, no kidding.
The scope of the accident. But in that moment, upon realization, the other driver admits to having dozed off and fallen asleep at the wheel and crossing the center line. And so, you talk about...
That's wild.
Yeah, you talk about something that, they're well insured, and there's a lot of things that go into this, but you just want to talk about something that could have been incredibly devastating to a company that was completely mitigated as a result of the decision to implement that risk management strategy, again, for all the right reasons. And then to have it come full circle after a couple of years worth of that investment, to see it actually pay off, was pretty incredible. And I got to be in real time, not on scene, but on the phone, listening to this all play out. And it's one of those moments where you're like, damn, I'm proud of them. Yep. I'm proud of us. I'm proud of the conversations we had. Because again, I had the ability to reflect at that moment to say, wow, this was a massive deal right now, but I also knew all of the reasons and the decisions that went into why they implemented this strategy. And it's like, this is exactly why we wrestle these decisions regularly as a business owner. We reach out to the appropriate people to get the advice, to make the decisions. So ultimately, we hope we never, that's the ironic piece about certain risk management strategies, right? We hope that we never actually experience the result, but they did.
Well, and that's what's so cool about this story too. I want to highlight several things. Is when a business owner oftentimes is taught about risk management, it's very much so in the insurance lens, right? You buy insurance, in this case, without telematics, you'd buy insurance to hopefully have enough money to pay for the damages to the third party and everybody injured and whatnot. That is one risk management technique. And, in this case, we're using a strategy in telematics to actually do multiple risk management techniques that we've talked about, which is we're trying to prevent the claim by training our drivers how to drive better. You can't prevent everything, though. And so we're also using that strategy to help us after the fact say, our driver did everything right to mitigate the impact of that claim. And then if we are still liable, you have insurance ideally set up correctly to pay for those damages if they happen. But I just think it's important that we look at it through all of those lenses that they did right.
Exactly.
You can never pinpoint it back, but maybe one of those trainings that we used with that driver actually was the thing that kept him focused on that road and not cross the center line, and actually driving appropriately. So those are the things that you can't exactly quantify, but in this case, you can use one strategy in a variety of ways to actually create the right outcome for your business, because ultimately he did nothing wrong. I was gonna hit one thing is like, let's think about that driver.
That's
for a
exactly what I was gonna say.
Yeah, like, man, if we didn't have that evidence, I mean, granted, thank God nobody was severely injured and he wasn't injured and all of those things, which could have been much worse. But think about that. If somebody was severely injured, he's going to for a while he's probably going to be like, no, there's no way I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't cross the center line. He crossed, but then everybody around you is telling you, you go into the claim situation, and when the insurance company's paying millions of dollars on behalf of these damages, and all those things are going to go into the psychology of that driver to just be in a much worse position, when in reality we can prevent all of that with the right training that kept him doing the right activity, and then having a backup mechanism to say and prove that, no, we were in the right here. So I think that just can't be. A lot of times, again, we focus on the financial outcome and the things like that, but there's a real human element to all of this too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And I know that for a fact too, because in the moment, you're questioning everything. Like, it's a tragic event.
Yeah.
You're being told, everybody around you is saying, you screwed up, you were wrong, you did this, you did that, and you're like,
am I crazy?
I don't think I did, but maybe I did. Yeah. And like, to have that affirmation and I guess comfort as much as you can in a terrible scenario or situation, like, that's huge.
Yeah.
And again, beyond that, not only for that driver, but he's going to tell other people in that company and outside of that company, like, this really, really saved me,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it when you try to think of a return on investment or quantify these investments, there's so many intangible values that you may or may not ever experience, but like, being able to grab those and understand those, or take from situations that we're going to share in this podcast to give you more comfort in those investments, and hoping that maybe you never have to experience what this client did. Those are the things that I think, as builders, makers, doers out there, it's sometimes hard. You lose track of that.
Yeah.
It's hard to realize that. So again, we want to bring those things to light when we talk about this stuff.
Well, for sure. And because a lot of times it gets boiled down to insurance savings.
Yeah, right.
Which is obviously a reason, one piece of the puzzle that you should use in making these decisions. And you should tell that story correctly to your insurance company, and why is it making you a better business, and all of those things that go into that. And to me, that is one of the last reasons why you should do some of these, make some of these investments, because there's just broader implications. Again, think about the disruption on the company if something like this had happened. The amount of time that's going to go into the legal side of it. All of those things are difficult to quantify. The brand in the market right now, they're on the front page of the newspaper. Big bad construction company hits community center van, and all the things, crosses center line, and they don't train their drivers, and who knows what's going to happen with all of that, and just the mental toll that's going to have, and all the things that, like, again, are intangible things that oftentimes we don't quantify, because we're trained, or we think about, like, is this going to save me money on insurance? Mm-hmm. And so those are all the calculus that has to go into these decisions, which again is why we want to start to highlight these, because they are sometimes cool stories. Sometimes probably we're going to have stories that aren't as happy ending type stories, but we can use those as examples to think through how we should be working on and in the business, particularly the risk management side. But then also, as we mentioned, we really want to be just telling the story of businesses doing the right things out there, building, making, and doing things in our communities, because ultimately that's what drives all of our local communities and nationally as well. And so I think that's going to be really fun, and hopefully then there's a lot of great stories about what these businesses are doing like this that we're going to be able to tell, and we're going to be able to hit on, and hopefully everybody out there will take some good takeaways from that.
Well, yeah, and then for that matter, hopefully people share stories. We'd love to have people reach out and want to be on, because they've got cool stories to tell, and we can tell those stories to the audience, because there's so many cool things that are going on out there. And yeah, you're right. I mean, this is the platform.
Absolutely,
share that
yeah.
information.
And hopefully we can have a little fun. You know, I mean, I don't know if anybody's gonna like listening to us all the time, but you know.
Hopefully over time we gain a little bit of an audience here.
I mean, we can talk Husker football. You know, we're in the.
Hey, they're undefeated. Right?
They are. Like, geez, you just jinxed that.
Yeah.
Big game this weekend.
That's probably just, yep. Yeah, we're all gonna look back on this and be like, yeah,
That
it was.
your
That's
fault.
the moment.
Yep,
That's
100%.
Yeah.
So, everybody, check out future episodes. Make sure you like and subscribe so you get notifications of all the future episodes. But we're excited. This is kind of a new project for us that I think is going to be really fun for us, and I hope everybody out there takes a lot away from it. So we will see everybody on the next show.